The Volanthi had ruled the stars for 12,000 years. They were a gentle species with silver skin and large dark eyes. Their bodies were thin and delicate, built for a world with low gravity and mild weather. They had never known war until the Kethvara came. Ambassador Silenra stood at the window of the High Council chamber and watched the sky burn. Below her, the colony world of Thesser was dying. Millions of her people ran through the streets, screaming, trying to find shelter that did not exist. The Kethvara ships filled the horizon like a swarm of black insects. "How many worlds now?" she asked quietly. "7," replied Counselor Methrin. His voice was hollow. 7 worlds in 3 months. 40 million dead. Perhaps more. The Kethvara were monsters. They stood 3 meters tall, covered in black armor that grew from their own bodies. They had too many legs and too many eyes and mouths filled with teeth meant for tearing flesh. They did not conquer worlds for resources or territory. They conquered worlds because they enjoyed killing. They were hunters, and the gentle species of the Confederacy were their prey. Silenra turned away from the window. The council chamber was filled with representatives from 19 species, and every single one of them looked afraid. Their fleets had tried to fight the Kethvara. Their weapons had bounced off the enemy ships like rain off stone. Their soldiers had died in seconds against the Kethvara warriors. "There must be something we can do," said a small creature from the back of the room. "Someone who can help us." "There is no one," Counselor Methrin said. "We have contacted every species in the known galaxy. No one will come. The Kethvara are too strong. Everyone is afraid." Silenra closed her eyes. She thought about her children, safe for now on the homeworld. She thought about all the children on all the worlds that would fall next. And she thought about the ancient beacon that sat in the deepest vault of the council building. The beacon that their ancestors had forbidden them from ever using. "There is one option," she said slowly. "One we have never considered." The room went silent. Everyone knew what she meant. "No," Counselor Methrin said immediately. "Absolutely not. That is forbidden for good reason." "What reason?" Silenra demanded. "We are dying. Our civilization is ending. What could possibly be worse than extinction?" "Them," Methrin whispered. "They could be worse." The beacon was old. Older than the Confederacy itself. It had been built by the ancestors to send a signal to one specific place in the galaxy. A place that every species knew about but no one ever visited. A place marked on every star chart with warnings in every language. The quarantine zone. The death sector. The forbidden region that contained a single planet orbiting a yellow star. Earth.s, YL, and single quotes Rhea, had studied the ancient records. She knew the stories about Earth and its people. The planet was a nightmare. Its gravity was crushing. Its weather was violent. Its oceans were filled with monsters, and its land was covered with predators that killed for food, for territory, or simply for pleasure. The air itself was filled with invisible poisons, and the water fell from the sky in endless storms. And somehow, impossibly, life had evolved there. Not just life, but intelligent life. A species called humans. The records described them in terrifying detail. They were persistence predators, meaning they chased their prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. They could survive injuries that would kill any other species. They could eat foods that were toxic to everyone else. They formed emotional bonds with anything, including creatures that could easily kill them. They kept wolves as pets. They rode on the backs of 1,000-pound animals for fun. 300 years ago, the Confederacy had made contact with the humans. The meeting had not gone well. The humans had been friendly at first, eager to meet other species. But then the Confederacy had seen what humans were capable of. They had watched recordings of something called war and hunting and sports. They had seen humans break their own bones and keep fighting. They had seen humans smile while covered in blood. The Confederacy had been terrified. They had declared Earth a Class 12 death world and established a quarantine zone around the entire solar system. No one was allowed in. No one was allowed out. The humans were too dangerous to be part of galactic civilization. For 300 years, the humans had stayed in their quarantine zone. They had built ships and stations and colonies on the dead rocks of their own solar system. They had watched the rest of the galaxy live without them. And they had waited. "We cannot contact them," Counselor Methrin insisted. "We imprisoned them. We called them monsters. They will not help us. They will probably destroy us themselves. Or they might save us," Silenra said. "We have no other choice." The vote was not unanimous, but it passed. Silenra walked down to the ancient vault herself. The beacon was a simple device, small enough to hold in her hands. She pressed the activation button and spoke into it. "This is Ambassador Silenra of the Volanti Confederacy. We are dying. A species called the Kethvara is destroying our worlds. We cannot stop them. We have no one else to call. Please, if anyone is listening, help us." She sent the signal. Then she sat down in the vault and cried, because she did not know if she had saved her people or doomed them. Far away, on the edge of the quarantine zone, a human listening station picked up the signal. The officer on duty was a young woman named Rodriguez. She listened to the message 3 times. Then she contacted her commanding officer. Within an hour, the message had reached the highest levels of the Terran government. Admiral Chun read the message in his office on Luna Station. He was an old man with gray hair and scars on his face from battles fought long ago. He remembered the day the Confederacy had quarantined humanity. He remembered the shame and anger his people had felt, but he also remembered something else. He remembered a saying that humans had carried with them since the beginning of their history. When someone asks for help, you help them. He picked up his communicator and spoke 2 words that would change the galaxy forever. Launch fleet. In the darkness of space, 37 warships powered their engines. They were massive vessels, built with thick armor and heavy weapons. They were ships designed by a species that expected the universe to be hostile. They were ships built for war. The Terran fleet moved toward the edge of the quarantine zone. For the first time in 300 years, humanity was leaving home, and they were angry. Commander Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the TNV Prometheus and looked at the stars. She was a tall woman with dark hair and eyes that had seen too much death. She had been born on Earth, in a city called Buenos Aires, and she had grown up knowing that her people were prisoners. The quarantine had shaped her entire life. She had watched other species travel freely between the stars, while humanity remained trapped in their own solar system. She had listened to the recordings of the day the Confederacy had declared humans too dangerous for the galaxy. She had felt the anger that every human felt when they thought about it, but she had also felt something else: curiosity, wonder, a deep desire to see what was out there, beyond the invisible walls that held her people captive. Now, for the first time in 300 years, she was going to find out. "Commander," said Lieutenant Park from his station, "we are approaching the edge of the quarantine zone. All 37 ships report ready." Vasquez nodded. She looked around the bridge at her crew. They were all young and strong, born and raised in the heavy gravity of Earth or the harsh conditions of the space stations. They were soldiers, trained for combat since childhood. And they were scared. She could see it in their eyes. Not fear of the enemy. Fear of the unknown. They had spent their whole lives being told they were monsters. Now they were about to meet the species that had called them that. "Listen to me," Vasquez said. Her voice was calm and steady. "I know what you are thinking. I know what you are feeling. We have all grown up being told that we are too dangerous, too violent, too scary for the rest of the galaxy. She paused and looked at each of them in turn. Maybe they were right. Maybe we are dangerous. But today, that is not a weakness. Today, that is our strength. There are people out there who need our help. They are dying, and no one else will save them. So we will. The crew straightened in their seats. She could see the fear changing to determination. We are humans, Vasquez continued. We come from a world that tried to kill us every day of our lives. We survived volcanoes and earthquakes and ice ages and plagues. We hunted animals that were bigger and stronger and faster than us, and we won. We are the children of a death world, and today we are going to show the galaxy what that means. She turned to face the main view screen. The stars stretched out before them, endless and beautiful. Take us through, she ordered. The fleet crossed the quarantine zone. No alarms sounded. No one tried to stop them. The Confederacy had bigger problems now. It took them 6 days to reach. Lesser 9. 6 days of traveling through space that no human had seen in 3 centuries. The crew spent that time preparing. They checked their weapons. They studied the enemy. They ran combat simulations over and over again. They also learned about the species. They were going to save. Lieutenant Kim showed Vasquez the files on the Volante. They were small and fragile, with bones that would break under Earth's gravity. Their skin was thin and sensitive. They could not survive in temperatures below 15 degrees or above 30 degrees. They needed special air to breathe and special food to eat. They are like flowers, Kim said. Beautiful but delicate. How did they ever survive long enough to reach the stars? Their world was kind to them, Vasquez replied. Not every planet is like Earth. Some worlds are gentle. Some worlds do not try to kill their children. She looked at the images of the Volante. They had large eyes full of expression and graceful movements that reminded her of dancers. They had built magnificent cities and created beautiful art. They had developed technology that humans could only dream of. And now they were dying because they had never learned how to fight. Commander, Park called out. We are entering the Vesser system. I am picking up multiple contacts. Hundreds of them. Vasquez walked to his station and looked at the screen. Her stomach tightened. The Kethvara fleet was massive. Hundreds of black ships hung in orbit around the planet like a swarm of flies around a corpse. They were organic-looking, covered in spines and ridges, as if they had grown rather than been built. Smaller ships moved between them, descending to the planet below to continue the harvest. How many survivors on the surface? Vasquez asked. I am detecting approximately 2 million life signs, Park replied. But the number is dropping. The Kethvara are still hunting. 2 million people. 2 million lives that depended on what happened in the next few hours. Vasquez turned to her communications officer. Open a channel to the Confederacy rescue fleet. Let them know we are here. The response came quickly. It was a Volante captain, and even through the translator, Vasquez could hear the terror in his voice. Unknown vessels, identify yourselves immediately. You are entering a combat zone. You must withdraw. The Kethvara are too powerful. You cannot win. Vasquez smiled slightly. This is Commander Elena Vasquez of the Terran Navy vessel Prometheus. We received your distress call. We are here to help. There was a long silence. Then the Volante captain spoke again, his voice shaking. Terran? You mean you are humans? From the quarantine zone? Yes, but you cannot be here. It is forbidden. You are dangerous? Vasquez finished for him. Yes, we are. And right now, that is exactly what you need. She cut the communication and turned to her tactical officer. What is the enemy doing? They have noticed us, Commander. A portion of their fleet is breaking off to intercept. Approximately 100 ships. 100 against 37. The odds were not good. But Vasquez had studied the Deathworlder during the journey. She knew their tactics. They relied on fear and numbers. They expected their prey to run. Humans did not run. All ships, she said over the fleet channel. This is Commander Vasquez. The enemy thinks they know what we are. They think we are like the other species they have hunted. They are wrong. She paused and took a deep breath. We are going to show them what a death world produces. We are going to teach them why the galaxy locked us away. Full speed ahead. All weapons ready. Today, we hunt. The Terran fleet accelerated toward the enemy. On the bridge of every ship, humans prepared for battle. They checked their suits and their weapons. They said quick prayers or whispered messages to loved ones. They were afraid, but they did not stop. The Volante rescue fleet watched in disbelief as the human ships charged directly at the Deathworlder. No other species had ever done that. No other species had ever been crazy enough to try. Commander Vasquez watched the enemy ships grow larger on her screen. Her heart was beating fast, but her hands were steady. She had trained her entire life for this moment. All ships, she said calmly. Weapons free. The battle for Thesser had begun. Admiral Kethros watched the strange ships approach and felt something he had not felt in a very long time. Confusion. He had conquered 43 worlds. He had hunted species across the galaxy. He had seen every kind of prey, from the tiny Volante to the massive Grundori. All of them had one thing in common. When his fleet appeared, they ran. These ships were not running. They were charging. What species are they? He demanded from his second-in-command. Unknown Admiral. They came from the quarantine sector, the Forbidden Zone. Kethros felt a small chill run through his body. He had heard stories about the quarantine zone. Everyone had. There was a planet there, a death world, where monsters lived. Monsters so terrible that even the peaceful Confederacy had locked them away. But those were just stories. Surely nothing could actually survive on such a world. Destroy them, he ordered. They are small in number. This will not take long. His ships opened fire. Bright beams of energy shot across space and struck the enemy vessels. Kethros waited for the explosions. He waited for the ships to break apart and burn. Nothing happened. The enemy ships kept coming. Their armor glowed where the weapons had hit, but it did not break. It did not even crack. Fire again, Kethros commanded. Full power, more weapons fire, more hits. And still the enemy ships came on, closer and closer, until they were in range of their own weapons. Then the humans fired back. The first volley destroyed 12 Deathworlder ships instantly. The weapons were unlike anything Kethros had ever seen. They were brutal and direct, designed not to disable, but to destroy completely. Where his weapons were precise and elegant, these weapons were savage. Admiral, his second-in-command said, fear creeping into his voice. Their ships. They are not slowing down. They are still accelerating. Kethros looked at the tactical display. It was true. The enemy ships were moving faster and faster, heading directly into the heart of his fleet. Any normal species would have stayed at range, fighting from a safe distance. These creatures were doing the opposite. They wanted to get close. The battle turned into chaos. The human ships plowed into the Deathworlder formation like wolves into a flock of sheep. They were everywhere at once, spinning and firing and ramming enemy vessels. They took hits that should have destroyed them and kept fighting. Kethros watched one human ship get hit by 3 weapons at once. Half its hull was torn away. Atmosphere vented into space. And then, impossibly, The ship fired its engines and crashed directly into a Kethvara cruiser, destroying both vessels. "They are insane," his second-in-command whispered. "They are completely insane." But the worst was yet to come. Kethros saw the boarding pods launch from the human ships. Small metal containers filled with soldiers, shooting across space toward his flagship. He laughed. Boarding actions were common in space warfare. His warriors were the best in the galaxy. These humans would learn their mistake quickly. The pods struck the hull and cut through it like knives through flesh. Alarms screamed throughout the ship as the humans poured inside. Kethros switched to the internal cameras and watched. What he saw would haunt him for the rest of his life. The humans moved differently than any species he had ever seen. They did not creep or sneak or hide. They walked forward calmly and steadily, firing their weapons with terrible accuracy. When a Kethvara warrior charged at them, they did not run. They stood their ground and fought. His warriors were twice the size of the humans. They had natural armor that could stop most weapons. They had claws that could tear through metal. And they were losing. A Kethvara warrior slashed a human soldier across the chest. The armor held, but the human staggered. Kethros expected him to fall back, to retreat, and find medical help. Instead, the human grabbed the warrior's arm and pulled him closer. With his other hand, he drew a blade and drove it into the warrior's throat. The human was bleeding. He was hurt. And he was smiling. What are these things? Kethros demanded. What world produces such creatures? A death world, his second-in-command replied. A world where everything is trying to kill you. A world where only the strongest and most ruthless survive. These humans, they are apex predators, Admiral. Just like us. No, Kethros said slowly. Not like us. We hunt the weak and the gentle. We have never hunted anything that could fight back. He watched another of his warriors fall to the human soldiers. These creatures have spent their entire existence fighting things that wanted to kill them. They are not prey, pretending to be predators. They are the real thing. The humans reached the engine room of the flagship. Kethros saw Sergeant Torres leading the assault. The big human had been hit 3 times already. His armor was covered in blood, some of it his own and some of it Kethvara. He should have been dead. He was laughing. "Come on," Torres shouted to his squad. "Let's finish this and go home. I'm getting hungry." They planted explosives on the main reactor. They fought their way back to their boarding pods, carrying their wounded with them. Not a single human body was left behind. As the pods launched back toward the human ships, the flagship's reactor exploded. Kethros felt his ship breaking apart around him. "All ships," he broadcast with his dying breath. "Retreat. Retreat now. Do not engage these creatures. They are. He could not find the words. In the language of the Kethvara, there was no word for a predator more dangerous than themselves. The Kethvara fleet ran. They scattered in every direction, abandoning the planet they had been harvesting, fleeing from an enemy they could not understand. The humans chased them to the edge of the system, destroying any ship that was too slow. And then they stopped. Commander Vasquez stood on the bridge of the Prometheus and watched the enemy disappear into the darkness of space. Her ship was damaged. She had lost 7 vessels and over 200 crew members. But they had one. "Commander," Park said quietly, "the Volanthi are hailing us. They want to speak with you." Vasquez nodded. She was tired and sad and covered in the dust of battle. But she straightened her uniform and prepared to meet the species that had called her people monsters. "Open the channel," she said. On the screen appeared Ambassador Silenra. The Volanthi woman was crying, silver tears running down her delicate face. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you. You saved us. You actually saved us." Vasquez felt something warm in her chest. For 300 years, her people had been told they were too dangerous, too violent, too scary. They had believed it. They had been ashamed of what they were. But today, being dangerous had saved 2 million lives. "You're welcome," Vasquez said simply. "Now, let's talk about what comes next." Ambassador Silenra had never been more frightened in her life. Not when the Kethora had attacked. Not when she had watched her people die. Not even when she had activated the Forbiddance. Beacon. She was frightened now because she was about to board a human ship. The shuttle that carried her from her vessel to the Prometheus was small and cramped. She sat in a seat designed for creatures much larger than herself and tried to control her breathing. Beside her, 2 guards from the Confederacy sat in nervous silence. They were supposed to protect her, but they all knew the truth. If the humans wanted to hurt her, nothing could stop them. The shuttle landed in the human ship's hangar bay. The doors opened and Silenra got her first look at the inside of a Deathworld vessel. It was ugly. That was her first thought. The walls were gray metal without decoration. The floors were hard and industrial. Everything was built for function, not beauty. It was the opposite of a Volante ship, where even the smallest corridor was designed to please the eye. And then she saw the humans. They were waiting for her in the hangar. About 20 of them, standing in neat rows. They were wearing gray uniforms that matched the walls. They were all different sizes and shapes, with different colored skin and hair, but they all had the same look in their eyes. Alert, watchful, ready. Silenra stepped off the shuttle on shaky legs. The gravity here was slightly higher than she was used to, and she felt heavy and clumsy. One of the humans stepped forward. It was a female, tall and strong, with dark hair and a face that looked tired but kind. "Ambassador Silenra," the woman said. "I am Commander Elena Vasquez. Welcome aboard the Prometheus. Please, follow me." Silenra followed. She noticed that the human walked slowly, matching her pace to Silenra's shorter legs. It was a small kindness, but it surprised her. They walked through corridors that were all the same ugly gray. They passed humans who stopped what they were doing to look at her. Silenra expected to see hatred in their eyes. After all, her people had imprisoned these creatures for 300 years. But she did not see hatred. She saw curiosity, interest, even friendliness. One young human smiled at her and waved. Silenra did not know what to think. Reached a room that Vasquez called her ready room. It was a small space with a desk and some chairs. There were pictures on the walls showing places Silenra did not recognize. Mountains and oceans and forests. Earth, she realized. Images of the death world. "Please sit," Vasquez said. "Would you like something to drink? We have water or something called coffee. I should warn you, the coffee has a stimulant in it. Probably not safe for your species. Water would be fine." Silenra managed to say. Vasquez brought her a glass of water and poured herself a cup of the coffee. Silenra watched the human drink the dangerous liquid as if it was nothing. For a long moment, they sat in silence. Silenra tried to think of what to say. She had practiced speeches on the journey here. Words of thanks, promises of cooperation, carefully planned sentences designed to keep the dangerous humans happy. But when she opened her mouth, something else came out. "Why?" she asked. Vasquez raised an eyebrow. "Why what? Why did you come?" Silenra felt tears forming in her eyes again. "We locked you away. We called you monsters. We told the entire galaxy that you were too dangerous to exist alongside civilized species. We took away your freedom for 300 years. Why did you come to save us?" Vasquez was quiet for a long time. She looked down at her coffee, then up at the pictures on her wall. Finally, she spoke. When I was a little girl, she said, my grandmother told me stories. Old stories from before we reached the stars. Stories about heroes and villains, about good and evil. One of those stories was about a group of people who were traveling through a dangerous land. They came across a stranger who was hurt and dying. The stranger was from a nation that had treated their people badly. They had every reason to walk past and leave the stranger to die. She paused and took a sip of her coffee, but they didn't. They stopped. They helped the stranger. They saved his life, even though he was their enemy. Do you know why? Silendra shook her head. Because it was the right thing to do, Vasquez said simply. Because when someone is dying and you can help them, you help them. It doesn't matter what they did to you. It doesn't matter if they deserve it. You help them because that's what it means to be good. Silendra felt the tears running down her face now. She did not try to stop them. We humans have a lot of flaws, Vasquez continued. We're violent. We're aggressive. We fight too much and forgive too slowly. But we also have some things that we're proud of. We're loyal. We protect the people we care about. And when someone calls for help, we answer. She leaned forward and looked directly into Silendra's eyes. You called for help. We answered. That's all there is to it. Silendra did not know what to say. All her life, she had been taught that humans were monsters. Dangerous beasts that needed to be contained. She had believed it. Everyone had believed it. But monsters did not talk about doing the right thing. Monsters did not save strangers who had wronged them. Monsters did not show kindness to those who feared them. I think, Silendra said slowly, that we made a terrible mistake. I think we looked at you and saw only the danger. We did not see this? Vasquez asked. The kindness, Silendra replied. The compassion. We saw that you were strong enough to hurt us, and we assumed that you would. We never considered that you might choose to protect us instead. Vasquez smiled. It was a small smile, a little sad. That's the thing about humans, she said. We can be the worst things in the galaxy when we want to be. We have done terrible things throughout our history. Wars, cruelty, destruction. All of it is true. But we can also be the best things. We can love with everything we have. We can sacrifice ourselves for others. We can take creatures that want to kill us and make them our friends. She gestured toward the window, where the stars shone cold and distant. The galaxy looked at us and saw predators. But they forgot something. Predators on Earth do not just hunt. They also protect. A wolf will fight to the death for its pack. A mother bear will face anything to save her cubs. That's what we are. Dangerous, yes, but also loyal, also loving, also willing to die for the things we care about. Silendra thought about this. She thought about everything she had seen and heard since the humans arrived. The way they fought with such terrible ferocity. The way they treated their wounded. The way Vasquez had slowed her walk so Silendra could keep up. What happens now? She asked. Now? Vasquez set down her coffee cup. Now we need to talk about the Cathvara. We hurt them today, but we didn't destroy them. They'll be back. And next time, they'll know what they're facing. You'll stay? You'll help us fight them? If you want us to. Vasquez looked at her seriously. But you need to understand something. If we do this, it's not going to be a temporary thing. We don't do anything halfway. If you let us in, we're going to become part of your civilization. We're going to be everywhere. We're going to make friends and build relationships and become involved in everything you do. That's how humans work. We attach ourselves to things. We become loyal. She paused. Some species find that frightening. Silendra thought about her children back on the homeworld. She thought about all the children on all the worlds of the Confederacy. Children who deserved to grow up in a galaxy where they were safe. I think, she said finally, That might be exactly what we need. 50 years had passed since the Battle of Desert 9. The galaxy was a different place. Now Ambassador Silenra stood on a platform high above the main plaza of the colony, looking out at a view that would have been impossible half a century ago. The plaza was filled with beings from dozens of species, all gathered together for the dedication of the Monument to Unity. Volanti walked beside Grundori. Methali children played with human children. Species that had once feared each other now shared meals and stories and lives. And everywhere, there were humans. They had spread across the galaxy like seeds on the wind. Human doctors worked in Volanti hospitals, learning alien biology with an obsession that bordered on madness. Human engineers built hybrid ships that combined the best of Terran strength and Confederacy elegance. Human teachers ran schools on 100 different worlds, patiently explaining mathematics and science and something they called literature. They had even settled on worlds that no other species could survive. Planets with crushing gravity and toxic atmospheres and violent weather. Worlds that any sensible species would avoid. The humans looked at these death worlds and saw homes. "You're thinking again," said a voice beside her. Silen returned to see Admiral Elena Vasquez standing next to her. The human woman was old now, her hair completely gray, her face lined with decades of experience. But her eyes were still sharp, still kind, still full of that strange mixture of danger and warmth that Silenra had come to understand so well. "I'm thinking about how much has changed," Silenra replied. "Good changes?" "Mostly." Silenra looked back at the crowd below. "Some of the old council members are still unhappy. They say that humans have taken over, that you have too much influence, that you have changed our civilization beyond recognition." Vasquez laughed softly. "Are they wrong?" "No," Silenra admitted. "They're completely right. You have taken over. You do have too much influence. You have changed everything." She paused. "But they forget what things were like before. They forget the fear, the helplessness, the certainty that we were going to die." The Kethvera Dominion no longer existed. It had taken 20 years, but the combined forces of the Confederacy and humanity had finally defeated them. The Harvesters had become the harvested. Their conquered worlds had been liberated. Their fleets had been destroyed. Their surviving populations had been given a choice: learn to live peacefully, or be confined to their homeworld forever. Most had chosen peace. It was amazing what beings could learn when they had no other option. "I received a report this morning," Vasquez said. "From the frontier. A small transport ship was attacked by raiders near the Outer Rim." Silenra felt a flash of concern. "Were there casualties?" "No. The raiders took one look at the ship's escort and ran." Vasquez smiled. It was a single human patrol vessel. One ship. The raiders had 12. And they ran? They ran. The commander of the patrol vessel was disappointed. She had been hoping for some excitement. Silenra shook her head in wonder. This was what the galaxy had become. A place where the mere presence of humans was enough to prevent violence. The Deathworlders had become protectors. The monsters had become guardians. "Do you know what they call you now?" Silenra asked. "In the outer territories. In the places where pirates and raiders used to hunt freely." "I've heard some of the names," Vasquez replied. "The nightmares of legend," Silenra said. "The beasts from the Forbidden World, the hunters of hunters." She looked at her old friend. "Parents tell their children stories about you. Not to frighten them. To comfort them? Comfort them how? They tell them that if they are ever lost or scared or in danger, they should call for the humans. Because the humans always answer. The humans never abandon anyone. The humans will come, no matter how far or how dangerous, and they will save you." Vasquez was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. "When I was young," she said, "I was ashamed of what we were. I looked at other species and wished we could be like them. Gentle, peaceful, civilized. I thought our violence was a curse. And now? Now I understand that violence is just a tool. Like fire or water or anything else. It can destroy or it can protect. It can hurt or it can heal. What matters is how you use it." Below them, the ceremony was beginning. Representatives from every species in the Confederacy had gathered to speak. Each one told a story about humans. The Methali representative talked about human doctors who had cured a plague that was killing his people. The Grunduri ambassador described human engineers who had saved a dying world. A young Velanti child read a poem she had written about her human classmates. Each story was different, but they all had the same theme. The humans were strange. The humans were scary. The humans came from a world of death and violence. And the humans had chosen to use their terrible gifts to help others. When it was Silenra's turn to speak, she walked to the podium and looked out at the crowd. She saw faces of every shape and color, all watching her with attention. She saw humans standing among them, tall and strong and watchful, their eyes full of that familiar mix of danger and love. 50 years ago, she began, I sent a message into the darkness. I called for help from beings that my people had feared and imprisoned for 3 centuries. I did not know if they would answer. I did not know if they would save us or destroy us. She paused, remembering that terrible day. They answered. They saved us. And then they did something even more remarkable. They forgave us. She looked at Vasquez, standing at the back of the platform with tears in her eyes. The humans could have demanded payment for their help. They could have punished us for the quarantine. They could have taken revenge for all the years they were locked away. Instead, they offered us friendship. They gave us protection. They shared their strength with species too weak to protect themselves. The crowd was silent, listening. We called them monsters, Silenra continued. We called them beasts and nightmares and deathworlders. We were not wrong. They are all of those things. But they are something else as well. Something we never expected. She smiled. They are family. They are the fierce, protective, terrifying family that the galaxy never knew it needed. They are the nightmare that guards our dreams. The predators who hunt other predators. The monsters who fight for the innocent. She raised her glass in a toast. To the humans. May we always be worthy of their loyalty. May we never give them reason to become our enemies. And may the galaxy never forget the day when we called for help and the Deathworlders answered. The crowd raised their glasses. Humans and aliens together, united in a bond that had been forged in blood and fire and sacrifice. Far away, on a small planet at the edge of known space, a Kethvora survivor crawled out of hiding and looked up at the stars. He remembered the day the humans had come. He remembered the fear and the pain and the terrible realization that his people were no longer the greatest. Predators in the galaxy. He had spent 50 years hiding. 50 years telling his children and grandchildren about the Deathworlders. The stories were meant to be warnings. They were meant to inspire fear and caution and survival. But somewhere along the way, the stories had changed. His grandchildren did not speak of the humans with hatred. They spoke of them with something closer to awe. Tell us again, grandfather, they would say. Tell us about the beasts from the Forbidden World. Tell us about the ones who answer distress calls. Tell us about the nightmares of legend. And he would tell them. He would describe the terrible battle and the impossible bravery and the relentless ferocity of the Deathworlders. He would explain how his people had hunted the weak for centuries and never thought to wonder what would happen when something stronger came along. Remember, he would say at the end of each story, remember what happens when you hurt the innocent. Remember what comes out of the darkness when you make the gentle ones cry for help. The Deathworlders are watching. The humans are listening. And if you give them a reason to come for you, they will. His grandchildren would shiver with delicious fear, the way children always do when they hear scary stories. But they would also sleep soundly, knowing that somewhere out in the vast darkness of space, the nightmare was on their side, because that was the